My name is Aline, and I am an addict. My parents were really young when they had me. My mom, I was born on her 15th birthday. So there was a lot of abuse, like from my dad, physical, emotional, verbal, a lot of it. He drank heavily, he still does. My mom, they got physical or whatever. She finally left him when I was 12. So I was a troubled child, even in elementary school. Again, in high school, it just progressed, and everyone else was talking about going to parties, and my partying was hanging out with a couple of friends, getting high and drunk. That worked for a little bit until I turned 17, and then I got expelled. I got long-term suspension from high school. I got arrested at school because I had marijuana in my backpack. And then I was on probation for that. The last 3 weeks of my junior year, we had lost our apartment. This apartment I had so much fun with because all my true friends, because I jumped from group to group, because I couldn't find the people that were like me. And then I finally found them in junior year, and they would come over and we would smoke weed all the time. She lost the apartment that we were living in at that time. I had to stay with my aunt for like 3 weeks. My dad ended up trying to fight custody for me and my brother, and he got custody of us because I was being selfish and I just wanted to go to the high school and graduate as an eagle. It was the worst decision of my life. 2 months into my senior year, I got expelled. I went to an alternative school for a week and then I ran away. I ran away to a meth house. And that's where my addiction really took off. My boyfriend, which is now my baby's father, it just got worse and worse. I finally was about to turn 18, but I was on probation still at this time. So when I ran away, it violated my probation. Got high and got really drunk and ended up punching my boyfriend in the face and going to jail. So it was from juvie to jail within 24 hours. Okay, so that's where addiction takes me. Okay, in terrible situations and jails. I found out I was pregnant and I was still smoking weed. I was smoking weed until I was 6 months pregnant. I guess I didn't cry, but I had the baby on my living room floor on a towel while my mom was on the phone with the ambulance. She delivered my baby. She's the first one that my son saw. So I had a drug test for 4 months after he was born. The day that I called that task number and it said that I wasn't on task anymore, that day was the day that I started smoking weed again. Me and my baby's father were going through some stuff and called the cops on him for domestic violence. So his mom thought, well, let me get back at her, and since I know that she's doing drugs, let me call CPS. They removed my son from my mom because I wasn't with my son at that time. I was at my friend's house using. After they took him, I just went on the longest run. My old crew, they had heroin. I asked them to hit it and they said no, well thank God, because I had overdosed on spice. The ambulance came and I woke up in the hospital 5 hours later. Thank God that I didn't smoke that heroin. I woke up and I was freaking out. I was like, I need to get out of here now because I need to get high. They were like, okay, well, let's just discharge you. And I'm just like, okay, cool. And the hospital was right across the street from the car that I had. I had my mom's car because I was doing arts and crafts. I would go to like retirement homes and I would do arts and crafts with them for that year from after I got out of the mental hospital and when I got my clean time. I was doing that. I would go do arts and crafts with the elderly because I didn't have a job. So I was doing that and I had to ask my mom for her car if I could use it to go do that. And I had the car. And so when I had the overdose, the car was at the person's place, which was right across the street from the hospital that they had taken me. But after that, I walked to the car, got in the car, I went to my friend's house. I was like, hey, I need my spice. I need my drugs. And she's like, okay. And then I went to go pick them up. I was still smoking, driving my mom's car. All I remember was after I got out of the hospital, I woke up on the side of the street with some chick knocking on my window. I'm not sure if she said, do you need help or I need help? Something like that. I looked at her and I kept driving. That's the only thing I remember of that besides when the cops pulled me over. The cops finally pulled me over because I had a flat tire, and I had heard it, and I was about to pull over, and then the lights turned on. I wasn't even scared because at that point I had no emotions. They were gone. So they pulled me over, they did the breathalyzer test. That was the moment that I got clean. I decided I needed to stop. Because not only could I have killed myself, but I could have killed somebody else. A moment of clarity, I guess. And so I had to tell CPS that I had relapsed, even though I had not even been clean. I told them I relapsed. After that, everything changed. Weird, because the night that I decided I was going to be clean, we went to a funeral. So I had been up all night because I was detoxing from this crap. We went to a funeral the next morning, and it was of my aunts. And when I was in that church with my family there with me, I just started crying, because that could have been me at any point, you know. And this could have been my family mourning me. After the funeral, it was like an after party thing, but everyone was drinking and getting high. I don't know how I did it, but by the grace of my higher power. I stayed clean for that, and after that I had gone on Facebook and talked to somebody that I knew was in recovery that I have known since high school. And she's like, okay, well, we can go to meetings. And then it was weird because the day that I had told her that, I went to the park with my son. I don't know why I told this woman that I wanted to go to meetings. She's like, well, I'm a normie, but I know my friends, they go to meetings. I can look them up for you. And I was like, thanks, that'd be great. So I got her number and she got mine. This woman picked me up and took me to my first meeting in recovery. I went to that meeting every single Wednesday, and I got a job that day too, the day of the funeral. Because after the DUI, in the morning, I went to apply at Walmart. And then at the funeral, they called me and said, well, your orientation is tomorrow. It was unbelievable. So I started going to meetings. I have a job. I worked really hard in that job, and I bought my first car. Then I started doing NA. That's when I really started, because my sponsor that was in the other fellowship had relapsed. And I was 5 months. And I had met somebody in the other fellowship that was decided that they're only going to do NA. So I was like, why? You know, what's the big difference? So I finally started going to NA, and now I know the difference, because it's all inclusive. No matter what you use, no matter how much you used of it, we focus on the disease of addiction, not what substance we used. So at 9 months clean, my schedule interfered with my meeting that I chair. It was my first service commitment, and I would chair the meeting, hosting it kind of thing. You know, I'm saying, here, someone read this, someone reads that, like directing it. I told them that I couldn't work that schedule, and my co-manager wouldn't listen to me. So at that time, I got the courage to I had to talk to my store manager about it. That was the first time I ever talked to my store managers. I was telling him that I was an addict, and that I'm in recovery, and that I have a service commitment, because the things that I require to stay clean is go to meetings, get a sponsor, work steps, get a home group, and be of service. And he's like, when is it? And I was like, Wednesday at 7:30. The latest I can be here is at 7. And well, if anyone has a problem with you leaving at 6, tell them to come talk to me. And then at the end of this conversation, he was so proud of me that I was doing all this great stuff, and that I was staying clean, and that I'm fighting for my son and all this stuff. And he's like, well, maybe you should think about being a supervisor, or growing in a business. And then he told me to take this test. So I took the test, and I think it was a month later, I finally got the supervisor position that I am now. This is what recovery has done for me. And that's only the beginning of it. I finally got my son back 2 days before his 3rd birthday. It took him when he was 9 months. I got him back 2 days before his 3rd birthday. And then New Year's Eve happened. The next month, I turned 1 year. I felt like my life was falling apart. Thought everything was supposed to be great, and everything kept just getting worse. Life is still gonna be life. I don't go to drugs, because any bad day clean is 10 times worse than any day using. But I felt like my life was falling apart. But it wasn't. It was just changing. I finally went through the emotions. After my 1 year, I started going to meetings every single day. I wasn't going to meetings every single day before. Even if I don't feel better afterwards, I got it out of my, out of my mind because I obsessed over it. That's why I got clean, so I can learn how to cope with it, so I know how to grow with it. I learned the skills to where I don't need to go get high, or I don't need to do these unhealthy behaviors. I mean, I still have a lot to work on because I'm still an addict. I'm always going to be an addict. A lot of the people that I used to hang out with when I was younger, before we even started using, we hung out, and now they're active users, or they're trying to get clean, and it's crazy because I'm just like, dude, I've been hanging out with addicts my entire life, even if they weren't using, even if we weren't using, because we know our kind. They're the best people that I've ever met. I don't think I've ever loved somebody other than my family like this. And A is my life, because it saved my life. It saved my son's life, because I can only imagine the situations that I could have put him in, or imagine if I had lost him forever. Recovery has given me a life worth living that I don't know how I would ever repay it. So that's why I'm of service, so I can give back.